Okay, we are live. Hey, ED300. This is Billy, and broadcasting live here from beautiful Pacific Beach, San Diego. The sun's going down, so you get a little extra glimpse of beauty tonight. We'll watch the sunset together, and we're joined by Jonathan Werner, who is works in Cape Elizabeth Schools. He's going to introduce himself in a moment, and we're going to be talking technology integration. Looks like Nate just showed up, so let's see who's in the room with us. Becca is here. Hey, Becca, how you doing?
I'm all right, Billy. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I've been shoveling snow for about 2 weeks, but other than that, I know so is everybody else here. So I'm sure we all appreciate your gloating about the beach.
No, I won't gloat anymore. I gloated enough. And Nate's here. Hey, Nate, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, guys? And I agree with Becca. This is kind of baloney. You're on a beach with warmers behind you. I'm sorry. No, I don't want to see it. I just turn my screen off.
Sorry. Okay. Camera's off. And Julia's here.
I've probably been there and or around where you are, and I don't want to go back. So.
Oh, you've been to San Diego, Nate?
I love San Diego.
Yeah, great spot.
I was stationed
awesome.
in California for about 4 years.
Oh, very cool. Nice. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Navy.
Navy. Beautiful. And we have Julia here. Julia's mic is on. She can say hi. How you doing, Julia?
Good.
Awesome. Awesome. And without further ado, we'll let Jonathan Werner introduce himself and tell you what all the amazing things he does. Jonathan, thank you for joining, man. You're awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hi, guys. So I'm Jonathan. I am a library and instructional technology specialist at Cape Elizabeth Middle School in Cape Elizabeth. And I've been at the library tech thing for about 5 years. Before that, I was an English teacher for about 10 years. Before that, I was a very angry and sad lawyer. And now I really like my life. I host One-to-One Tech Chat Wednesday nights at 9 Eastern, which is about schools that have one-to-one technology and sort of what's different about those and how to, think about their the uniqueness that they offer. And then I'm the president of the ISTE Librarians Network. So ACTM is our state technology group. ISTE is the parent organization of that, and the Librarians Network has about 2,000 members, and I have some great opportunities to connect to librarians all over the place and kind of get a sense of why my life is just ridiculously embarrassment of Richards, an embarrassment of riches in terms of I have two librarians in my building, 2 in the middle school, 2 in the high school, and 1 plus a tech integrator at Palm Cove, the elementary school. So 6 of us in a district of about 2,000 is really incredible. We're one-to-one grades 5 through 12, 5, 6, and 9 through 12 are iPads, 7 and 8 are laptops, and the elementary school is getting pretty close. They're about 2-to-1 right now.
And you said Pond Cove. We got to give a shout out to Tom Sheltray, who you're working with. Terrific follow on Twitter. I'll post his. I'll go ahead and post his Twitter handle here, guys. In the message
Pond Cove Tech. And he's amazing. So he's right across the way from me, and I've done a lot of great collaboration. The partnership between the high school and the elementary school when I was there, because I was half-time at the high school, half-time at the middle school till this year. And then, as I said, the budget was ramped up from there, and so now there's 2 of us, and I get to work full-time in the middle school, which is a lot less schizophrenic, and I love the woman I work with, Amanda Kazaka. So that's a great opportunity, too, to have sort of more of a focus. And Tom and I have had a lot of opportunities to partner on, especially elementary school events with assistance from middle school and high school students, and kind of the tech team model, where students are empowered to help make decisions and offer advice and tutorials and things, and really a great PR campaign for your district if you can do that. And I think one of the things I try to figure out on a pretty regular basis is what I can do to tell the story of my building, my district, my work. There's this woman, Nikki Robertson, who I love, who's a librarian, down in Alabama, I think. And she says you basically have two options. Either you tell the story of your school and your program, or someone else does. And if you tell it, you really like the story and you'll like the narrative. And if someone else does, you're really going to not like it and you're going to look terrible. So when it's like focused on the principal sex scandal instead of like the amazing creation that's going on in your makerspace, that's really no one's fault but your own, because you're not challenging the narrative with your own competing sort of story that's compelling. And so I work really hard to get out there in everything from this class to one-to-one tech chat, and I speak at as many conferences as I can just to say, you know, this is what I'm doing, and my district is incredibly supportive of it. And back in December, I got invited to go to the White House to talk about future-ready technology and future-ready librarians, and none of that would be possible without my connections on Twitter and my PLN. So I would say that, I know, you know, Rockstar. Mind you, I was sitting next to this guy who was like, hey, how are you? I'm Mike. I'm like, hey, Mike, what's up? Mike then gets called up. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike, the governor of West Virginia. I was like, okay, well, I'm feeling like Joe Schmo right up now. So I'm the governor of my house. But anyway, it was a really cool experience. And I think no more important thing to have as a part of your professional development than a group of colleagues that are not in your school that you can connect to. And it's everything from like, I always give the example of my friend Felix Giacomino down in Miami. And I put out, you know, I need a QR code reader for my entire high school. Every kid has an iPad, and I want to push them out pretty quickly. And I don't have time to mess around with the wrong thing. And this is not hyperbole. 17 seconds later, he answered me, and he was like, the only thing you want is iNigma, which is I-NIGMA. And it reads QR codes from an enormous distance immediately. And it is, it's a really incredible opportunity to just not have people telling you the wrong information, or, you know, like, try this. You just get great answers right away. And then also you get feedback. You know, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Oh, well, I did this and this. So as an example of that part of it, we totally redesigned our library and turned it into a learning commons, which means it's really noisy and really sort of active, and a lot of engaged learning happening there, not a lot of, you know, lecturing or sort of absorbing of information. It's not a quiet place on a very regular basis. And to do that, we went out and visited all these other schools and talked to all these kind of people, all these kinds of people who had done the work before. And it seemed like, you know, a no-brainer. It was so inexpensive to send us out on release time. And the result of that was pretty much no major mistakes, and therefore a huge savings financially. And we opened the doors and people were like, wow, this is fantastic, which, again, is not possible if you're doing it on your own. Like, so much in education, we're trying to reinvent the wheel when the wheel's already been invented, and we should be refining it. And not to say we should copy other people's work, but, you know, if Tom has an amazing situation going on with elementary school students, why wouldn't you share that with Billy and say, hey, Billy, what do you try this? And when they visit each other's classrooms before the betrayal, we had these opportunities to, you know, kind of collaborate across districts and see each other's perspectives. So huge shout out to your PLN, however you develop it. Mine has been Twitter, but I think I got lots of other ways.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. And that's such a great segue into tonight, what we're talking about. We're talking SAMR, technology integration. And one of the things that technology does in terms of your professional learning network is it redefines the possibilities of how you connect with people.
Yeah.
You couldn't have that. You couldn't connect globally and find out what people are doing around the world and next door without technology. So
yeah, one of my most sort of fantastic role models for ed tech is in New Zealand. You know, and as if I could somehow, I don't know. I mean, it's a great example of the kind of crazy opportunities I have to work with someone that I would never, and I've met him because of conferences, but like on a regular basis, I'm not going to pick up the phone and call New Zealand, but through Twitter, Google Hangouts, whatever, I have that opportunity. So I'm very grateful for it. So, I'm going to just jump right in. You want to give me a little more background on what you guys have been doing, or what do you think?
We're in module 3 right now, and module 3 is focused on SAMR and TPAC, technology integration models. And really what I'd like to really talk about tonight is what do schools do wrong? What do the schools do wrong? And in my mind, oftentimes people think that technology will be your solution to your problems, when in reality, it's a pedagogy problem. It's a learning problem. And if you are thinking you're gonna that technology is gonna be the magic wand that just engages your students, then you're wrong. It's all in terms of how you use your technology.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of schools you'll see guys who get these great technology. They get all the technology into their classrooms, and well, now what do we do? And you tend to see people just substituting what they used to do with technology. And the real advantage of technology, the real power of technology, is how it opens up the possibilities of things that you couldn't do before. So I just really hoping tonight, Jonathan, you can talk about SAMR and give them kind of a global framework of what do you think of how to think and how to look at technology as kind of a starting point.
Great. So I need to remember how to switch over to my screen share up in here. It's a button on the left-hand side, I remember. There it is.
So while Jonathan's doing that, guys, you could kind of hover your mouse onto the left, and you'll see a bunch of different tools. And Jonathan's using the green one as the arrow, and that's a screen share.
So you guys see my blackboard with white and yellow writing?
I don't, but my screen may be frozen. Let's see. Hey, Nate, you seeing that, bro? Oh, I'm seeing it now.
If I do this, if I hit play again, do you see it or
I'm turning my mic off.
Okay. Can you see the slides though? Not the, like, are you able to see it right now?
That's a yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so my job before I was a library and instructional technology specialist was technology integrator. And that meant that people turned to me to figure out, so I was a classroom teacher, as I said, people turned to me to say, you know, what can we do with technology that's different? As Billy said, you know, you can put it in there and have it not do anything. We always joke that and the reason I have this background as a blackboard is because we always talked about people using the tablet as a stone tablet, you know, and they would just take their chisels and chisel in what they would in their notes without any real transformation. And so I think that that model for me of rethinking, and I guess the tagline for me has always been that you can have great teachers and they made you know technology, and you can have great teachers who use it and it enhances their work. But I think the most common situation is a poor teacher for whom technology makes it worse. It gives them an excuse to be even less engaged and less a part of the teaching and learning. And so those are the situations I felt like I really had the most challenge. And I'll talk a little later about what I did to address that and what I continue to do. But it's really, you need to pick up on the people who are leading, who are already respected as teachers, and get them integrating if you're going to actually make a difference, because no one's going to listen to the whiz kid who can use it really well but doesn't actually teach particularly well and is not seen as a teaching leader.
Jonathan, one real quick, sorry to interrupt. Are you running with the slides right now, or is it just sitting there?
Just sitting there for a minute.
Okay, good. I'll shut up now again.
No. And you all should jump right in. I can't see the chat window when I'm in this because I don't have the mad skills to do that. So turn on your mic and ask me questions. I am like 100 miles an hour, a difficult train to stop, as Beck and Billy can tell you. So don't hesitate to throw your vehicle in front of my tracks.
Yeah, just hop in, guys. You know, everybody's starting to get comfortable with the Google Hangouts. Just if you got a question, just interrupt, or you can, if you're not comfortable doing that, pop it in the chat box. We'll interrupt for you.
And I'm just quickly, Werner, going to go check to make sure I can't see your slides. But as I said in the chat box, I know Werner's game, but it's more important that Nate and Julia and the rest of our students can see your slides. So I'm just going to check to make sure that they're on the YouTube Live, the other link right now. So not the Hangout, but the one that's being broadcast, just for posterity.
Posterity, okay.
I can figure out where that is, but you can keep going.
Okay. Actually, let me just try one quick thing. If I do this instead, and I do, come on. does this weird
Oh
thing.
boy, that's terrible.
I know, right? What's up, y'all? So what if I do this now and that? Can you still see him?
I got it.
Good. Okay, I think that may be.
All right,
I'm not hearing
perfect.
anything now.
Thanks, Warner.
So Becca, jump back in and stop me if it's not on the YouTube channel.
Good
Right.
stuff.
So SAMR is SAMR, substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And I'll show you a bunch of different images that help to describe it. But really, as Billy said, the first step and probably the least effective is where you swap it out. You substitute technology for paper, technology for the blackboard, whatever it is. So my biggest issue is that so much of the time that substitution is kind of like clothing, and we take it and we wrap it around existing existing pedagogy, and it just is a external addition, but it doesn't penetrate. It doesn't become the bread and butter of what you're doing. So the analogy I've often given is this one, that it should instead, because your kids and your students are going to have it be their skeleton, and everything they do is going to require their complete facility and skill with it, you can't put it on as topping. It needs to be the ice cream. And your teaching and learning isn't all technology, and it's not impossible without technology, but there are times when it should be inextricably linked to what you're teaching, and it should empower it in such a way that without it, there would be a noticeable difference in the quality of your teaching, and especially the scope, like what you could connect to. I mean, the point of the internet is not for us to game or for us to have Google Apps for Education. It's to do author talks in the library and, get to see the real, Katie Camillo, who won the Newbery twice, can walk in your classroom virtually and be like, hey guys, what'd you think of my book? You have distance learning, you have connected classrooms with everything from mystery Skypes to collaborative projects across enormous distances. We have an amazing Spanish teacher at Cape who, because we're one-to-one, she brings her class in the library and they do like a Google Hangout group to group, but then they put their iPads all around the classroom, and the classroom in South America is also one-to-one, and they have these one-to-one conversations, and they'll do writing. And the most hilarious one was they each wrote essays about monsters, and the American kids wrote them in Spanish, and vice versa, Spanish-speaking kids wrote them in English, and then they read them to each other, they critique each other, they peer edit, they talk about them, they practice them, and then they come back together again. Well, when was the last time you had a conversation with someone in Paraguay who taught you to be a better native speaker? I mean, that's the kind of thing. And her teaching, her name is Senora Dana, her teaching is transformed by technology. And yes, it was amazing beforehand, but because she's willing to fail miserably and, learn from that and let her kids try things out and, expand the world that they contact, that is the difference between a meaningful and a sort of superficial Spanish education. So anyway, she's a great example of having made technology her skeleton. So what does it mean specifically? The terms mean technology is replacing the traditional methods and simplifies or streamlines them, or as I said, really just makes them worse because all you're doing is typing instead of handwriting, and you're copying down notes from the board at high speed instead of only as fast as your hand can write. So usually we use substitution pejoratively to mean, oh, really, all you can do is substitute it. And there are times when it's better. Certainly it's more environmental. Oftentimes it can be quicker. You can add in you can add in internet access while you're doing research that would otherwise be only in books and have all these digital resources, but you're still doing traditional research to write a research paper. It just, the way you're looking for the material might make the material better, but it isn't a different kind of teaching and learning. This is where it begins to get more sort of, starting here, we talk about positive uses of technology pretty much all the time. Excuse me, I have to cough. So technology is expanding on traditional methods and improving them. So your teaching and learning is always better if you're augmenting it. You're making it more accessible to people. These might be things like you have a kid with a 504 plan who's home with a long-term illness, and they're fully a part of your classroom through technology, and they're fully participating part of the dialogue simply because they can FaceTime into the classroom, and their physical absence isn't creating any major barrier to their learning. It might also look like something where you are using joint, what are they called? Collaborative documents in Google Shared Docs. Wow, that was a hard term. And you're co-writing something and you're editing each other. And in my group of librarians, we have a shared document that we constantly drop stuff into, and it's not, we're not there all at the same time. And so if you guys have taken asynchronous classes, meaning they're not all happening simultaneously, it allows for us to have an asynchronous dialogue about the upcoming conference in Texas, and we can do nonstop planning, not when we're all sitting on a Google Hangout together for half an hour once a month. So that kind of opportunity is an augmentation instead of just a substitute. It's giving you opportunities you otherwise would not have without the technology. Go for it, Billy.
No, I'm good. I didn't have any. Do we have any questions out there?
Well, I kind of like, especially with being in the Northeast and not the Southwest, when you have a lot of snow, I did a hangout for a class that I missed. So instead of losing that time in the classroom or losing that information being put out, we were able to get together as a classroom, use the time on Hangout, and still not lose a step in the classroom. As of other classes, I've lost almost 3 days of classroom, and then have vacation now. I'm going to go back and we're going to have to try and catch up, 3 classes. So it's good to have the technology that, and if everybody can gain from losing classes for weather or other inclement things that happen. So.
Absolutely, Nate. Oh, did we lose Werner?
No, I didn't know if other questions. I still can't see the chat, so.
Julia, how are you feeling out there? Do you have any questions or any comments, wonders?
No, I completely agree with what Nate said, though. There's been way too many snow days. I feel like I haven't gotten into a groove or anything. So this is like the only class where it's been consistent, I guess. So it's nice having that technology. I agree.
Yep.
So modifications are where technology is actually changing the nature of your classroom and the way we teach. So if I can use Billy's example for a minute, technology empowered his kids to become the news and sort of broadcast, and he could teach them to be a part of a public audience, and it gives you that public audience. And we know from all our education research that if you give people a public audience, if you give students a public audience, pretty much automatically the quality of their work is going to increase. So if they're writing blog posts that are public, if they're even responding to each other and reading each other's writing, the quality of the original work is always, well, almost without exception, at a higher level than what it would be if it was just going to be read, commented on, and dropped in the proverbial round file. So I think that ways in which modification might emerge would be ones where you couldn't teach without it, and what it's empowering you to do. The word I use frequently is afford. The opportunities that it affords give you a different kind of teaching and learning. And frequently there's a line drawn, and I'll show you an example of it in one of the illustrations, but between augmentation and modification, that technology that is substitution and augmentation can be great. It can be, sort of run of the mill, but once you get into modification, you're acting more like the kids' future experience and the way we need them to think. And it's sort of been digested recently as, if we are teaching kids to comply, we are making them, we're teaching them to be irrelevant, because compliance is self-driving cars and robots doing construction and manufacturing, and we need to give them a creation economy, a series of skills for a creation economy. And that, I think, is where technology becomes the total game changer, because it is very difficult to have a kid do rote learning and follow the total line when you're giving them a technology modified or a technology redefined experience.
Absolutely, man. I'm starting to think about the world that these kids are going to live in, and we don't know what's going to happen, 20 years from now, but we can only imagine what it's going to be like, right? And you mentioned it, Jonathan, the things that are rote memorization type stuff. We want kids that are going to create their own opportunities, not just sit back and try to find that job.
So,
and technology's changing the game, man. Anybody can have a website. Anybody can create a social media presence. You can go out there and be an entrepreneur in this day and age, and it happens. And it's just a beautiful thing to see.
And this is related, and I don't want to shift it too far in a different direction, but I was just listening today to I don't know what it was, something on MPVN, like On Point or something. Billy.
Yep.
Mute yourself. But it was about adults who are redefining their lives, like, later in life. And there was this one caller who actually called in and said, the most important thing is not to learn like a really specific skill or a really specific, trade, but learn like flexibility and innovation and creation. So a combination of, both what we're talking about in the whole growth mindset concept. And, I liked hearing that, be spread, granted it's like, public radio, but even by, older folks in the workforce, not that sounds ageist now. I'm going to stop talking and maybe drink some water, take some more NyQuil. But, I hope like that gets the point across, I hope.
Yeah, and I'll show you some examples of that in a second.
Sorry, Warner.
No, I totally agree with you. Just you're introducing sort of the shift that has to take place in the teaching and learning. And I think, again, technology is not the answer to that. It is not the silver bullet, but it can afford opportunities that did not exist when it wasn't there. And so transformative teaching can happen in ways with technology, not that didn't happen, but could not happen on the scale that they did previous to that. I had outdoor experience classes that, had me climbing rocks and having, and this is as a high school student, and, experiencing the world and then solving problems that we were encountering in real world situations. We did volunteer work in local, I worked in a homeless shelter. And so the skills I learned there had nothing to do with traditional classroom skills. But another great follow on Twitter is Jamie Casap, C-A-S-A-P. And he's one of the Google evangelists, they're called. And he gives two examples that I think are brilliant. One is you don't ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up. You ask them what problem they want to solve. And that to me is such a fantastic thumbnail sketch of what we want to teach our kids. And I'll give you kind of a framework for that in just a
Jonathan, I'm going to have the opportunity to meet Jamie at Future Now at Design 39 campus coming up into April. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
And you are really winning big points with me, Mr. Beach Boy. Anyway,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. So the other one is, the other one he says I love is, imagine for a second I'm in a classroom and I say to the teacher, I couldn't do this test by myself, so I brought some guys together, we all sat around the same table and we shared our notes and our thoughts, and here's our final exam that the 6 of us worked on together. And the teacher's like, okay, cheat, never beat, and you just failed my class. And then you take that same situation to Google and you say to a team, what I said to myself was, I am the best at this, and I have got to access the knowledge that is only in my brain and come up with a solution that is meaningful. And I got laughed out of the room because I didn't collaborate. I didn't look for feedback. And I'm actually, with a straight face, presenting something that I have the ego to believe could be of any value without bouncing it off others and making iterations and moving forward as a group. So we cannot have school and our economy look so disparate and have the rules of one directly, 180 degrees contradict the other. So that to me was, those two together were sort of a fantastic, if you're looking for two great talking points about what you're trying to do differently in your classroom, say those two. A supervisor would be like, well, all right, you're right. I can't ask you to give tests if those are going to be the, the situations that are going to define your teaching and learning. I mentioned a minute ago, these top two often are delineated as separate, and they're called enhancements. And then the bottom two are transformation. So transformational teaching, where what technology is doing is really redefining the work. So if we go from enhancement to transformation, we are not necessarily going from simple to complex, meaning it doesn't mean that we're making the teaching and learning more intricate or more difficult. It means it has a different mindset and a different model. And I love the idea of the growth mindset. Amanda and I, my colleague, talk about being direct, offering direct instruction in growth mindset, because our fifth graders come in with their attitude so frequently. And this is a critique of my district, which we're all facing and is readily acknowledged among my colleagues, that because we're so defined by test scores and college admission and parents' perception that we are doing the things that are indicate that we are providing the skills necessary for the traditional indicators of success, the result is a kid comes into my classroom in fifth grade and says, I don't know how to do this. And I say, that is a really depressing thing to have a 10-year-old come in and tell you, well, I need you to feed this to me. So I think the way in which we rethink the approach has to look at things like, what are the metrics? How do we measure success? Maine has, as you probably know, gone to from the Maine learning results to now the, what are those 5 circles called? The guiding principles. And I love the guiding principles. I know people throw a lot of poop on them, but if you are teaching, number 2 is self-directed learning. If you're teaching a kid to be a self-directed learner, that is a game changer in terms of the kind of education you're providing. So I'll share these slides with you afterwards. You don't have to take notes on them or anything or memorize my brilliant words here, but there's 5 ways or 5 subject matters in which substitution is taking place. Here's 5 where augmentation might be taking place. Google Earth is a great example where you can give kids an opportunity to cross the bridge. I don't know if you've seen Google's 3-dimensional tours of various places, but you can put on Google Glass and you can walk across the bridge in Selma. And as you do that, you're hearing the narratives of the people that did it. You're hearing John Lewis, tell you about his experience. There's clickable resources. There's, you enter a civil rights museum. That experience for a kid looks completely differently than opening up the textbook in which you learn about crossing the bridge in Selma. So I think that's just a minor example of the way in which you are really powerfully augmenting your teaching and learning, but you're basically still teaching the same material, which is I want you to understand what happened in Selma, Alabama. Third one, modification. This might be something like Omnigraphal, which I love, that uses the technology to take the information they're collecting and transform the way that they perceive it, and also really put an emphasis on clearly presenting it to others. One of the ways Wainfleet, where my kids go, tries to distinguish itself is that they write across the curriculum. And what that means is that every kid can expect to write in every subject, not least of which is math. So you're giving the kid not just the skills to do the calculations, but the skills to communicate what those calculations mean, their significance, and to talk through in traditional language that is accessible to a layperson what they have discovered. So you might do a statistical analysis, but you have to then present the statistical analysis to the layman and make that person understand. So Omnigraphal might be a tool that gives you the opportunity to collect that information and to figure out, using the tool, how to present it. And then you add on top of that, collaboratively writing in Google Docs, the narrative or the script you use to describe that to the person that otherwise wouldn't have the skill set to access or to be able to create the material you've created to share with them. And then redefinition. Vernier video physics is an example, uses probes, and you don't teach science to your kids, you make your students scientists. They do data analysis based on data they've collected themselves. They are presenting that data. They're doing robotics in a way that allows them to figure out what, they use the probe to figure out what the problems are with their robots. Is it acceleration issues? Is it something to do with the angle, which a particular mechanism is working? The Vernier video physics basically slows everything down in the same way that an athletic trainer might do that, and gives you the opportunity to look at the physics and the science of that through the lens of an app that is reading the forces that are at work and helping you figure out where they're not optimized or not doing at all what you want them to do. So if you haven't seen Ruben Puentedura, he's the guy who invented SAMR and sort of is the ultimate speaker about it. But I think in some ways he's been eclipsed by the model we'll talk about in just a second, which is TPAC. And if you have SAMR in your background or sort of in your headspace as you approach this next piece, I think it'll help you see how TPAC becomes, for me at least, the model I want to pursue. I will say this about the iPad situation. It is very easy on a laptop to do a lot of substitution because of apps and because in some ways, ironically, the challenges of using something like Google Apps for Education, or what's now called Google Suite, the iPad can really get you rethinking what you're doing. And going back to Tom Charles-Trey, who we talked about at Pond Cove, what he's doing with his kids about creation as the assumption. They walk up to their iPad and they use it with the assumption that the purpose is never consumption. It is not a gaming device. It is not about having someone present things to you. It is about how you use the tool to create something that otherwise couldn't exist and which you couldn't create without the tool.
Thank you, Jonathan, for saying that. I think there's a big misconception with the iPad, and a lot of it is parents, from my experience. Parents saying, well, they can't, the kids can't type on it, the kids complaining. It's all about adjusting. If you think about the future of learning, it's anytime, anywhere. And when you think about the mobile device, that's really going to be our main tool for learning when you think of anytime, anywhere. And the iPad could do a lot. Look at the iPad Pro, it's got a keyboard, but even the iPad itself, our kids are adapting. So it's not the kids. To me, it's almost like a parent issue. They're thinking that the kids can't use the device in the right way. I don't know how you feel about that, Jonathan, or what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I really have felt like there's no clearer message than the one that gets the parents. I mean, there's no better way to get kids transforming their parents' perception than by transforming the way in which they're using the technology and the expectations you set up. And my son is in Tim Hebda's class at Waynfleet, and Tim talks about how the assumption in his classroom is that when they access the iPads, there are tons of times that they don't. And when they do, it is because the iPad is affording an opportunity that doesn't otherwise exist. As an example of that, in the simplest form, it is really sort of a substitution modification piece. But the kids, my son as an example, does this incredibly granular, differentiated math program that allows him to pursue it at exactly his pace, with video support, with a chat with his teacher Kai when he has questions. And it makes for asynchronous learning, as I said earlier, but also for a classroom to focus on problem solving, because the skill building is taking place in one-on-one with the device. And so even though he's going to it for a more traditional, direct instruction, it is in a completely interactive way, and it is totally geared to him and his skill set. And that is an example of how something that is substitution or maybe augmentation, where I don't mean that dismissively, I mean it as an incredible magnification of what his experience is, because he comes back to class the next day with mastery of a skill that then he can apply, instead of spending all that time directly instructing him in the specific skill and expecting that he's going to do all the practice and all the learning right there in front of Kai, only face to face. So then this goes to what Billy just said. SAMR is not a destination. It isn't a kind of ideal, once I'm redefining my teaching, I am doing everything I need to do, but it's a mindset, and it's a way in which you sort of think about your growing as a teacher. It is about you as a teacher. It is not about your kids. It is about how your kids experience technology, but you are not saying to kids, go redefine education with technology. You are giving them models for which, to which they can sort of apply frameworks. You've given them growth mindset as an example, and your job is to redefine the teaching and learning for their opportunities. This one I love too, originally created in Texas by the keynote speaker at Acton this year. Oh my goodness.
Carl Hooker.
Thank you, Carl Hooker.
I just saw Carl at the Summit in San Diego, Innovation Summit, And
And such a like low-key, hilarious guy.
oh, he's
Um,
wonderful.
That's so
He's very,
accessible.
very inspirational, real, funny.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy you can connect with.
Yeah, and not in any way sort of like, above like, oh, what I do is unique and I hope you can catch up with me. It's like, here's the real deal. And this is a great example. So many people say you have to go this way, you have to start in substitution, then you can start augmenting. And he said, if you think of a way to redefine, jump right in and move this way. And I love this. Get rid of the line we just talked about and just keep swimming back and forth as long as you are coming up with ways to continually develop your education and using technology when appropriate and telling kids, flip it over and close your lids. Right now we're doing something that's, Lego based or whatever it is. You don't assume that the technology is necessary to that. This diagram I love too. Kathy Schrock mapped this, which is the Bloom's technology from understanding and applying all the way up to creating, saying that has a pretty similar connection to the SAMR model. And I feel like that is a really good, so many of us have experienced Bloom's technology and knowing that our kids are really learning when they're creating. Well, our technology, when it is redefining our teaching, is probably when the kids are creating and evaluating using technology, it is most frequently a kind of redefinition that's taking place. Here's another way I really enjoy thinking about SAMR too, which is that you're sort of going deeper and deeper. And this guy's saying, I wonder what's in the ocean. And this one who's really just exploring it and, in the depths, looking ahead into something we don't know. The technology is affording you the opportunity to be an explorer, not to be, just swimming along the surface, but to really have the tools at your disposal to be looking ahead and also to know that that you're comfortable with the unknown. You have what you need to move in that direction. Okay, so here's my long promised TPAC. And this for me is where this was the game changer when I started to think about it. So TPAC looks at technological skill up here, pedagogical skill, your teaching styles and abilities, and then content knowledge. And we were here for years and years. We were taught content and given expected. I could not have been hired at a competitive school if I did not have extraordinary content knowledge. Then you went to graduate school, you got your master's, and they taught you pedagogy. And they're like, if you want to get them to access the content, you have to apply pedagogy and teach well. Well, for many years, this was it. It was just these two bubbles. And then technology emerged, and that became your facility with technology. And I would argue now that this is the silver bullet, because there is really not, sorry, I have to cough again. I joke, and it was dead serious, but it's a killer example that when I was reading my collection in my library to pack it up for our renovation, I came across a title which was Current Issues in the Soviet Union. And I was like, well, there is no better example of outdated content knowledge, which is utterly useless to my kid. So why would I have memorized the issues in that and think that that is what I need? What I need instead is the pedagogical knowledge to know how to teach my kids and the technological knowledge to know how to teach them access to accurate.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Just to kind of clarify, can you just talk a little bit about pedagogy, what that means,
Sure.
what that is? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So
yeah.
I don't know if I can zoom over.
We have a class that ranges from undergraduates to students who are entering the profession. So we just want to kind of clarify that so they understand what pedagogy is. No,
That's
it's okay.
No, it's good. It's this yellow box. So it's the knowledge and practice of teaching and learning that an educator can use, such as classroom management, taxonomies, which are like ways to organize your thinking, planning, and assessment. So it is the techniques you use in your classroom and the approaches to your teaching and learning, not what you're teaching or the tools you're using, but the how, and knowing that, for example, there are ways you can engage a classroom by differentiation or by group work. And I'll show you another model for that in just a second. But the sensibility that your approach to your teaching and learning is itself a skill set. So you could have crazy technological skills and unbelievable content knowledge or access to it, but you get up there and lecture to your kids, it's not going to penetrate. And you need a different approach to that teaching and learning that would be your pedagogical skill. So it's what makes you a good teacher, not just a smart geek or, you know, a skilled Jeopardy player.
Awesome, absolutely. So like project-based learning, even design
Yes.
thinking. Dan Ryder preaches design thinking as a pedagogy, not just doing a project. Personalized learning. There's several ways that you can reach your kids.
Yeah. So let me finish that sort of piece with.
While Jonathan's doing this, guy, hey Nate, Julia, how you feeling? You guys got questions or anything you want to add? Becca?
No, I think I'm good.
I was just thinking when Werner was talking about how the pedagogy piece is so important. I mean, I definitely had a pretty steep learning curve when I had a master's in English, and I was like, I'm like really literary. I'm an academic. I can be a teacher. I can teach kids about, literature easily because I know about it. But then like the pedagogy piece was, really tricky once I was thrown in front of a bunch of 8th graders for the first time, and who knows how long as part of the ETEP program, like, 1 week in. And, that's what made me realize how important pedagogy is. It's so much more than being smart or being smart and good with computer. Anyway, handing it back to Werner now that you seem ready.
Well,
Totally, Becca. Oh, sorry.
Becca and I were in a class together when she made that discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. That was
I've been
really hard.
for 5 years, and watching her sort of like, watching you, I'm not talking about you like you're not here, watching you experience like that frustration, and you were so angry, and I remember you feeling like, I'm going to give up on this. When
Yeah,
I was
it was hard
expressing
for a
that.
while.
Like, you could not translate what you knew into how to get the kids to know it. And then I remember you having this series of hilarious, well, probably very moving, but like the way you told the stories of like, oh, sweet Moses, Bedoy, the kids would totally respond to X. And who cared what you were teaching them because they were learning.
Right.
It wasn't the material. It wasn't your like genius symbolic interpretation of Jane Eyre and the Woman in the Attic.
Do with that at all. Turns out they don't really care about like
Iambic pentameter.
things past. But anyway, yeah, I mean, and Werner, I kind of forgot for a second that, not that I forgot about you, but that you were there for that, like my first semester of grad school for teaching. And, I want you guys to know, not just Nate and Julia, but any of you who watch this recording, like Billy and I and Werner and anyone we connected with, we're totally here to help you when you're going through, those struggles, because they happen. And it doesn't mean that, you're not meant for this. It's just, part of diving into the brave new world of teaching. And I can't believe that was now like 6 years ago, which is
exactly
crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Just to close that kind of same thought out, Becca, we're throwing so much at you this semester, and I think back to my ETEP days, like you two, and I felt so overwhelmed at times, and I felt like I was just, it wasn't going to click, and it will. So just keep the path, build your mindset, build your toolbox, connect with people, and just know that someday you'll be there.
Force be with you right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so cheesy, but like the three of us have days where we suck so badly that it's hard to believe that we are not immediately escorted out the door by our principals for the tragic excuse for teaching we've been doing. And it's really a question of like increasing your percentages and feeling like, you know what? I mean, I teach this crazy class called Idea Lab, which is a growth mindset class. Oh my Lord, like 5th graders, I still have not a blessed clue how to teach 5th graders effectively on a regular basis. And the most bizarre things ignite them, or seemingly bizarre. And so it's really a question of like, more and more frequently, can I get them to be ignited? But I mean, in a 5-day week, at least 2 of the lessons have miserable aspects, and another 2 are sort of more good than bad. And I only have one home run. Yeah, but I mean, it really, the only home run is approaching it with your own growth mindset. Like, I don't know this now, and boy, that was painful and embarrassing and awful. But the reality is, I will know it, and I'll get more and more frequently able to. And I'll also recognize that my PLN is going to bolster me. And when I feel those really low moments, I'll be able to turn to them and be like, dude, how do I teach this? And that's when you sort of ignite through that connection with another person, the ability to really grow as a teacher, because you're not trying to do it on your own. You're not trying to do it in isolation. You're trying to do it as a part of a group, and sort of a, the it takes a village cheesy analogy. It really does, because it is the most isolating and difficult place to be if all you're doing is closing your door and trying to teach with that door closed.
Well,
I mean, sorry, I have to share an example now. That we digress, but it makes me think the most recent time. So my media team, we're now live streaming some school events, and I'm like, this is a risk, but we're ready to do it. We're going to do it. And then I let some kids do commentary for a basketball game, and I was watching at home with my administrators. We were the only audience, but it was my administrators and me watching their first run. And I'm watching, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, I'm so fired. I am so fired tomorrow.
That was a short period.
It's all teachable moments, right?
Right. I approached it more as like, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to go in, I'm going to talk to these kids about why X, Y, or Z might not have been the most professional things to say. And, luckily my administrators, they also recognize that, like, so this is what we started with as our baseline. How can we improve? And when the village shares that mindset, that's when I think the most impactful learning and change can occur.
Totally.
Anyway,
and kind of piggybacking off that, one last thought. Like, I mean, we got to remember who they are, where they're at. These are kids. So yes, we have a certain accountability we want for our kids, and we want a certain expectation, and they are learning, they're growing. Think about where they're at and where you were at when you were that age. So, I teach 4th and 5th graders, and there's times when I can be super frustrated, and I just have to take a deep breath and remember, how was I at that age? How was I when I was in middle school? How was I when I was in high school? They are learning. And that doesn't mean we excuse them, but that means that we meet them where they're at, and we try to help them as much as we can, and have a lot of patience and compassion, and, and be there to kind of let them know when they need to straighten up.
Right.
Nate, you have to say something.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like that we can use technology as that trust bond, because kids nowadays are using technology more than most teachers are. I feel teachers are trying to catch up to what their students already know. So I feel like that connection on the technology level can bring teacher and student relations so much closer. I know I've said this before, but when you only have a book and a blackboard, it kind of hinders the ceiling. So when you have technology, you can have different platforms you can use. You can have different experiments, like, all right, well, commentating didn't work, or what can we do with commentating and make it better for next time? So I think technology gives that leeway of expanding different horizons to make everything better for teachers, students, and the whole school, and big picture.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, a great example of that is the people who look at me with a straight face and say, social media has no place in the school. And I turn around and I'm like, so your theory is, hey kids, good luck with that? Like, that's what that's what you're saying to me with a straight face, is this incredibly central piece of their experience as a kid is not our responsibility to help guide them?
Because most of the times you're going to see them using it under their desk, or book bags, or as soon as they leave the classroom, they're going to be on an iPad, or they're going to be on their phone. Like, to hinder that when they get in the classroom, I feel like that's just, they're going to hate that class right from the get-go. And
I think, a complete abdication of your role as a teacher, because you're basically saying this massive aspect of your life is not my responsibility, and arguably bigger than most other aspects of their, the difference between their lives and ours when we were younger is the nonstop public nature of their lives. And Kevin Honeycutt, a couple years ago at Actum, talked about, like, imagine what it would be like to have your diary and everything in your life constantly open, and not just constantly open, but recorded for posterity to be looked back upon, by the future. And he goes, the likelihood that I would have ever gotten a job if I had in anything to do with kids, if I had social media when I was a kid, is zero, because I did way too many stupid things. And that situation hasn't changed for kids. So what we have to teach them is, how do I, again, going back to what I said a while ago, how do I tell my story, and what is my digital, and I call it, based on Kevin's work, what is my digital tattoo? And so if you aren't using technology in that way to teach them what they should be doing in their future life, well, you're really giving up on them. And this one for me has been sort of a great example that I was thrilled that this teacher was actually projecting something, and I thought maybe having some kind of interactive conversation, and determined as I ran down the hallway that actually it was not his movie box that was the problem, but his projector, his overhead, because he tired of writing the same thing on the board for 4 periods. So if he wrote it on a overhead, he could just put it back on the overhead later in the day. Talk about an abdication of duty. That is like the ultimate example for me. And it was all I could do not to laugh out loud when I realized my mistake, because I thought, like, really? That is impressive that you are that, I don't know, hitched to the past that you don't see what, when I say to you, like, that's really crazy that you're having me replace your light bulb. He didn't see that as anything other than, like, that's my job. You're my tech integrator and I need a light bulb. All right, well, I'm on it. So let me leave you with this one. This is really my absolute favorite kind of encapsulation of what we've been talking about. The Partnership for 21st Century Education and 21st Century Skills hired Peter Reynolds, the artist, to come up with a story. And if you Google, or actually if you go to YouTube and search Above Beyond Peter Reynolds, there's this 3-minute video in which these 2 kids are given the assignment to build a go-kart from a kit. And he builds it perfectly, and she begins to dream about what it could be. When he looks over the fence, he realizes that she's doing this crazy thing. And as a result, they get together, and he's basically what I would say is type A, and she's type B. And she's never going to accomplish it without his help and detail-oriented. But what he's going to build is only a carbon copy of what the directions said, and it's not going to do anything unique. So she sits here and sort of evaluates what skills or what abilities the bird has, and then the 2 of them develop together this flying machine that, wait for it, goes above and beyond and wins the race that they're put in. And that has been digested into these 4 things, and the 4 C's of teaching as an express skill. To do well in my classroom, you must be able to and required to communicate. You have to be required to collaborate. You have to be taught to and then apply critical thinking, and you have got to be creative. And this goes back to what Jamie Cassup said, that this is the skill set that we demand everywhere except in a traditional school. And if you know anything about the history of school, the purpose of school was to program kids to be compatible with the Industrial Revolution. And that's why we have bells. Bells emulated factory whistles, and classroom shifting emulated shifts in the work schedule. I mean, it was as basic and banal as that. And so our modern system was premised on the idea that we needed to prepare robots to be cogs in a machine, and, you know, to build Henry Ford's Model T. Well, we already know that all of the discussion recently of the economy, the single greatest threat to our economy is replacement of skilled workers with people who are, with machines that can do the same job faster and better and work 24/7. So if we are not giving them this skills, and this, what they, P21 calls them the super skills, if we're not giving them these super skills, we are failing them. And so as a piece of that, going back to the social media piece, social media can be all about communication and collaboration. For me personally, it's all about critical thinking, because I use my PLN to help me with ideas and to develop better and better skills as a teacher. If I am avoiding social media, I am cutting them off from appropriate uses. And I talk to my kids about so much of social media is used to cut people down. What if we assumed that the purpose of social media was to build each other up? And I show them some examples of what I call helper hashtags, where something transformative has happened because social media was used for benefit, or as I say, for good, not evil. And that becomes a great teaching point for them. And we follow, I'm teaching them right now a unit about ADA and the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we're exploring our school using bots. And I tell them the only rule is you can't pick them up. They have to be able to roll everywhere. And so I'm using the technology, but my real focus is on getting them to think as groups, small groups, about how to solve the problems in places that they can't access by only rolling, and then to empathize with people who can only roll. So what's happening to a kid in a wheelchair when they encounter that obstacle? And then better still, what research can we do to figure out ways to address that problem that other people have found solutions? And then finally, can they figure out ways to apply that learning to solve the problem? Well, I'm telling them that one of the major places they're going to find those solutions and those skills and inspiring people is through social media. So I'm like, let's hop on Twitter and see what is going on with ADA in schools. And they're like, did you just say hop on Twitter? I said, well, where else are we going to find it? And the transformation I'm experiencing with my students is that the current 5th graders and 6th graders have had Tom Chaltre in 3rd and 4th grade, and his classroom as a regular activity tweets what they're doing, shares out what they're doing with others. And so they see social media as a platform for creation. So if other people are creating, they're not now surprised to use it as a resource for their own learning. And so that sort of cycles in the right direction. And they go home and say to their parents, you know what, I was using social media today to learn about this awesome guy who has developed a skateboard that works for people with no legs. I'm like, well, my job is done. I can, close up shop now and head home. So that's really where I felt like I can be a different kind of teacher for them, because I'm telling them, not only is this not taboo, it is the bread and butter of what we're doing. And that becomes, I hope, a redefinition of teaching and learning for